episode is going to show you the different ways to import Photoshop, Illustrator, and TIFF files into the After Effects software. I double click here and go to the exercise files of Unit 4, and you see the Illustrator Photoshop files here. You see that this is a Photoshop file with some layers, and also an Illustrator file with 3 layers. Well, I want to import this Illustrator file into the system. When I come to the After Effects and select this file with the Illustrator format, there are some buttons here: import this footage, composition, retain layers. When I click on footage and select import, you see that another window opens here too, which is asking me, are you sure that you want it to be important with these settings? I click on OK, and you see that the Illustrator file comes in like this. When I drag and drop it into the timeline, you see that it comes in as a footage file here, and I don't have any access to its layers. This is for when you have an Illustrator file and you don't want to add any changes to its layers. Okay, I delete this here. Double click. The next mode is when I come to composition, retain layer size. When I click on it and select import, you see that here it is important here as a composition file, and also a folder here which has all the 3 layers of that file. As you can see here, layer 2, layer 3, and layer 4. When I click on this composition, you see that those 3 layers are shown separately for me here, and I can use them to add any changes I want to them. For example, I can delete layer 3. You see that in the previous mode this wouldn't happen, and I only had 1 footage, and if I would invisible, it will be cleared together. Well, I delete these here. The third mode is the composition. When I click on import, you see that my files come in here, and it is exactly just like the previous mode with a little bit of differences. Usually when you want to import these files, you have to set them on composition, retain layer sizes. There are also some ticks here. For example, sequence option, which is asking you how to import that file. For example, I've activated this and click on OK. You see that this window again opens. Here I can select choose layer and select the layer which I need. For example, layer 2. I click on OK and drag and drop it into my system. You see that only layer 2 is shown here for me. When I go to composition, layer 2, which is visible here, is only imported into my timeline. Well, I delete this here. The other kinds of the files which I have here are the ADOBE Photoshop files. Well, you see that there's a file here which has 4 layers, 2 text layers and 2 photo layers. I want to import them into the After Effects software, and I come here, you see the same buttons here. When I click on import, you see that again this window opens for me here. I click on OK, and you see that it is important here as a footage for me. and I can change its layers. I cannot change its layers. The other mode is the composition mode, retain layers, and when I click on import, you see the previous window again here. I click on OK, and you see that my files come here, are imported into here as compositions, and I can change any of these layers I want and set them on different modes, which I like. Well, these were the different ways for importing the Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop files. The other files are the TIFF files. I can select all of them, and there's a button here as footage, and when I set it on TIFF sequence and click on import, you see that here is asking me some questions. I click on OK, and you see that my TIFF files are imported here as a complete footage for me here, which are around 134 files here, and all of them are imported here as a footage for me. I can also select create composition here and select them all again. Click on import, OK, and you see that there's a question for all of these footages, and when I click on it OK here, all of them will come here. And this is how you can import the Illustrator AI and TIFF files into the After Effects software.